Most in the country never felt that we'd be vulnerable to an attack such as the one that Osama bin Laden.
How can any candidate, Democrat or Republican at this point, should that person become president, be able to convince other countries to work with us in a way they haven't up until now?
I think what you have to do is you have to create a new mechanism in Iraq. The UN can't do it, but you could create something like what we had in Bosnia. We called it the Peace Implementation Committee. And the Peace Implementation Committee gave every nation that contributed a seat at the table. And so not only did they put forces and resources into the mission, but they got to talk about it. They got to participate in the decision making. That's what's missing in Iraq right now. And we need to create an organization like this. Come the 30th of June, it's not going to be possible for the United States to continue to direct affairs in Iraq, indeed, if we've done so.
So you don't think we'll be able to turn it over at 30th of June? You don't think it's going to happen?
I think we've got to move ahead with the 30th of June date. But I think, you know, at this point, there's no plan. The president doesn't know who we're turning it over to because we don't know. It's depending on the UN negotiator, Ladakar Brahimi, to go in and find that out. It's symptomatic of the mission. There's been plan after plan put forward. They've been discarded.
One last question. We got
feasible.
15 seconds. Yes or no? Would you accept VP if asked?
Well, you know, I've said I'm not interested in that, and that's my view. I want to go back in the private sector. I've done a long time in government service.
That's a no, I'm guessing.
I'm proud of this country. I like John Kerry. He's going to be a great president.
All right, General, thanks for being with us. Coming up, the personal and professional side to the 9/11 hearings. His wife, Barbara, was killed in the terror attack. The last Solicitor General Ted Olson, if he thinks justice will ever be served. It's coming up.
Ashcroft on the hot seat. Hello, I'm David Folk Thomas. Attorney General John Ashcroft denies he was not interested in hearing about terrorist threats ahead of the September 11th attacks on the U.S.
But the simple fact of September 11th is this. We did not know an attack was coming because for nearly a decade our government had blinded itself to its enemies. Our agents were isolated by government-imposed walls, handcuffed by government-imposed restrictions, and starved for basic information technology. The old national intelligence system in place on September 11th was destined to fail.
Ashcroft testifying he told the Senate months before the attacks his #1 priority was to protect the American people against terrorism. John Kerry fielding questions from college students in Rhode Island during a town hall style meeting. It was another stop on a campaign tour of several campuses this week. Students peppering him with questions on a range of issues from the environment to the Iraqi war. The calendar says April, but a mixture of rain, sleet, and snow reminding folks of wintertime in Kentucky, Tennessee, and West Virginia. The storm surprising weather forecasters. It shut down schools in Kentucky and West Virginia, over 4 inches of snow falling in western Tennessee. The University of Colorado suspended football coach says everyone at a party in 2001 shares blame for a rape episode. Gary Barnett testifying about the party at the center of a campus recruiting scandal. 3 women claiming athletes raped them during or after that party. Since 1997, a total of 8 women have claimed CU athletes raped them. A beer baron wants to become U.S. Senator from Colorado. Peter Coors admitting he lacks political experience, but claiming he has knowledge about government and creating jobs. Coors may face former Congressman Bob Schaefer in the GOP primary in August. Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell is stepping down because of bad health. Well, now from our newsrooms coast to coast, we take you across America courtesy of the Fox Report.
Florida, part of a roadway under construction in Tampa collapsing. The Highway Patrol says a concrete column supporting the elevated span sank about 20 feet into the ground. Investigators are still trying to figure out why that happened. 2 workers slightly injured. The collapse closing the Crosstown Expressway, making a mess of traffic. Minnesota, a smokestack that's been standing in Minneapolis since 1910 stands no more. No fancy explosives work here, just a heavy cable and a backhoe. The rest of the old plant will soon follow that smokestack. Florida, a baby boy with serious heart problems getting the world's smallest pacemaker. Doctors implanted the device just minutes after he was born. The pacemaker stabilized the boy's heartbeat, keeping him alive. Doctors say he'll need several more surgeries to repair his heart. Arizona, a bald eagle nestling being returned to the wild in Mesa. The bird actually found as an egg 5 weeks ago. Now she's being placed in a nest that already has another nestling. If all goes well, the foster parents will take in the newcomer and raise her as their own as part of a Fox Watch. Across America.
And Barry Bonds passing his godfather Willie Mays on baseball's all-time home run list. The San Francisco Giants outfielder hitting his 661st career round tripper Tuesday night. Bonds is now 3rd in baseball's history book, only the Babe and Hammerin' Hank ahead of him. More headlines just after the bottom of the hour.
And coming up later, the FBI and 9/11. The Bureau's anti-terror efforts were called into question today, but are they pointing fingers in the wrong direction? But first, as Solicitor General, he serves as the government's lawyer before the Supreme Court. But Ted Olson had another reason to follow the hearings on Capitol Hill today. His wife, Barbara, was on the hijacked plane that crashed into the Pentagon on September 11th. I had a chance to speak with Mr. Olson earlier today. Ted, good to see you again. Well, thanks for coming back on the program.
Sean, it's very nice to be on the program with you.
You know, it's very hard for me. I was a big fan of your wife, as you know, and she was a friend of mine. And even recently I saw a note that she had written me. It's got to be so tough on you, even now, a little over 2.5 years later. How are you holding up?
Well, I have a very fine job with the Justice Department, as you know. It has a lot of responsibility, and I'm very lucky to have it. I'm surrounded by very, very good people. I'm happy to be working in this administration with John Ashcroft, and these things keep me busy. Of course, I think about things like that, and I do remember that she was a big fan of yours. But you just keep doing the best you can and take one day at a time.
Yeah. You know, one of the things you think back, and I know we're examining all the events leading up to September 11th, but she made that call to you. Remind us of what she said, and do you think about it often?
Well, I think about it from time to time. I'm reminded of it from time to time, especially during these commission hearings. She called me from the airplane. She had a hard time getting through because she was having to use the airplane phone, and she was calling to collect to the Department of Justice, but she finally got through. We talked for a moment or two, or a few seconds, maybe 20 or 30 seconds, and she was cut off, and then she called me again. She told me that the plane had been hijacked. And she wanted my advice as to what she should do. I'm collapsing the two conversations. I tried to find out from her. I knew at that point that the two planes had been hijacked and crashed into the World Trade Center, and I had to tell her that so that she had to know what the gravity of the situation was. I was heartbroken as soon as I found out that she was on one of those planes. I'd been worried about it from the moment I heard what was happening in New York.
Yeah.
She tried to help me as much as she could in terms of telling me where the plane was and which direction it was going. But we were then cut off, and just a few minutes later, the plane was crashed into the Pentagon.
I know that there are reminders every day for you, and I talk to other victims, family members of 9/11. Do you think, and I think perhaps it's even natural, do you think a lot of the country has forgotten that attack and that day? Darryl Worley has a song, "Have You Forgotten?" Have too many people forgotten?
Well, I think it's natural as a defense mechanism for human beings to not to forget about tragedies, but to let the edge be worn off. I think it's a defense mechanism, and people know that. At the same time, it's exceedingly important for people to realize that this could happen tomorrow or the next day or the week after that, as long as there are people out there that are determined to inflict the greatest possible injury on the most innocent of people in our country. And I guess we need these reminders because we need to avoid thinking about it because it's painful, but we need to think about it because it's necessary to defend ourselves.
Yeah, let me ask you how you feel. I know you were friends with John Ashcroft, but he had some stunning words to say today, I think, when he said the simple fact of September 11th is this. He said, we did not know an attack was coming because for nearly a decade our government was blinding itself to our enemies. Our agents were isolated by government-imposed walls, handcuffed by government-imposed restrictions, starved for basic information technology. The old national intelligence system in place on September 11th was destined to fail. When you think about your wife and losing your wife that day and the 3,000 other people that died, and then you hear those words, how does that make you feel?
Well, I think that I'm aware of what he said. His words are very, very absolutely true. They're very poignant. The system was broken. We had gotten ourselves into a situation with court rulings and Justice Department regulations where intelligence gathering officials could not communicate with law enforcement officials. And people in this country talk about connecting the dots. You cannot connect the dots when one person has information about two dots and someone else has information about others, and they can't communicate with one another. What we have to think about, instead of wringing our hands about the terrible consequences of what happened as a result of that failed system, is to fix the system. The first thing that this administration did is to try to correct that situation through the USA Patriot Act, and fortunately Congress passed changes that helped us with it, and then we appealed the court orders that were binding our hands, so to speak, and we were successful in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Review Court in getting that policy set aside. But, Sean, it took us 12 months to get those things accomplished. All the while, we were still in that situation where intelligence people could not talk to law enforcement people. One never knows what could have prevented 9/11 from happening, but if our enemies had wanted to disable us from stopping their plans, they would have devised a scheme such as which was in place prior to 9/11.
Yeah. One of my biggest criticisms now, I feel that this commission and the hearings we're watching in many ways has been politicized. I particularly was annoyed, a little bit even today, but watching the testimony of Condoleezza Rice. Is that your assessment?
I was very disturbed by the tone and the prosecutorial approach that were being taken by some of the members of the commission. I think that maybe there's a temptation that's too great there to grab headlines or to posture in front of cameras. I don't know what it is, but it's tragic because this commission must be in moderation. It must be reserved. It must focus on the mission to prevent these things from happening again. And if it engages or members engage in demagoguery and political finger-pointing, it will lose its credibility with the American people, and it will not solve the problem. We have to solve the problems of learning all of the things that we can do to prevent it from happening again. That means all of the American people have to be on the same team, Republicans or Democrats, liberals, conservatives, whatever. And it's very destructive if this commission careens off course.
Yeah, I agree with you. I want to ask you this in particular, staying on that point about those that attacked us on 9/11 and killed Barbara. They're not looking at liberal, conservative, Republican, or Democrat. They want to hurt Americans. And I want to ask you in particular, do you feel that the country has done everything and is doing everything? I, for example, would like to see us really close off our borders. I don't think we've been as tough on that issue as we need to be. Do you feel, as somebody who lost a loved one, a wife, that we're doing enough? And what recommendations would you make? Your opinion is more valid, I would assume, than anybody on that commission.
Well, I'm not going to offer specific suggestions. I will say that the USA Patriot Act that some people have criticized without knowing the implications of it is absolutely essential, and those protections have to be renewed. We have to continue the war against terrorism. We have to stand behind the president and the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, they are working as hard as they can. The Attorney General testified today that he knows what it's like to take harsh measures because he's been criticized for taking restrained and legal, but measures against terrorism. He's has been subjected to a lot of criticism. The administration, I can tell you this from being very close to the people in the White House and the Defense Department and the Attorney General's office, the Department of Justice, are working 24 hours a day to try to find ways to interdict this from happening again. The American people have got to stand behind the administration, and again, it's not a partisan thing. It's law enforcement people and our soldiers. We have got to find and root these people out. We've got to remember that it could happen again. They are planning terrible events for people, and it may not be in Washington, it may not be in New York, it may be in Chicago, it may be in San Francisco. No matter how far away you are from where the tragedies occurred on September 11th, our people are not immune from this sort of thing. We have to be extremely vigilant.
Ted Olson, we still miss his wife, Barbara. She was a good friend of this program. And coming up next, Attorney General John Ashcroft told the 9/11 Commission today that another large-scale terrorist attack could hit the United States. Are we doing everything we can to prevent it? And then, how did President Bush's primetime press conference affect the political scorecard? And how will you, the American people, react? Straight ahead.
Somewhere between where you are and where you're going, there's a Super 8.
I think we're right about here.
See you along the way.
Having a hard time finding the perfect home? Now there's JustListed.com. Just Listed emails you every home that's right for you as soon as it hits the market. JustListed.com. Your next home is here.
Blue skies smiling at me, nothing but blue skies do I see.
HP Services and Technology help the world's great companies face, manage, and love change.
Singing a song, nothing but bluebirds.
HP. Invent.
It's different for people with acid reflux disease because you know the heartburn's gonna nail you. And over time, all that acid could rip at your esophagus. Next time, Nexium, the healing purple pill. For many, one prescription Nexium daily not only gets rid of that heartburn, more importantly, it also heals erosions caused by acid reflux. And healing is such a great feeling. Other serious stomach conditions may still exist. Talk to your doctor. The most common side effects of Nexium are headache, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Don't let acid reflux eat at you. Next time, ask your doctor about Nexium.
I'll take that.
Because healing is such a great feeling. For a free trial offer for Nexium, visit us at purplepill.com or call 1-888-PURPLE-PILL.
Neither administration put its intelligence agencies or law enforcement agencies on a war footing. A war footing means we seal borders. A war footing means we detain people that we're suspicious of. A war footing means that we have statutes like the Patriot Act, although with time-set provisions, give us new powers. We weren't doing that. Now, whether there was a political will for it or not, I guess we could debate that.
Well, that was former FBI Director Louis Freeh responding to some strong questions today, but he wasn't the only one to get grilled. Both Attorney General John Ashcroft and former Attorney General Janet Reno also testified today and faced some blistering criticism about the intelligence failures before September 11th. Will the FBI and the CIA ultimately be the fall guys for the commission? With us now, former FBI Assistant Director Steve Pomeranz. Steve, thanks for being with us. Louis Freeh seemed to be, much like John Ashcroft did, pointing the finger at his former boss, Bill Clinton, today. Was Clinton the fall guy today, and is that where we should be pointing fingers?
Well, I think Louis got it pretty much correctly. The failures to deal with terrorism over the years, over successive administrations, exactly the way Condoleezza Rice said it in her testimony. That's what led to the tragedy on September 11th. It was not the FBI, it was not the CIA. Collectively, for decades, we simply didn't exert the political will to do those things that we had to do to make us secure. We are doing those things now. It took a terrible tragedy to put us in the right direction, securing our borders, sharing intelligence, dealing with the countries that sponsor terrorism, taking the fight to the enemy.
He talked about lack of resources. We've heard about computer systems they put in 1995 that was 80s technology. The inability for, you couldn't even do a search, and you couldn't communicate well outside the agency. Is that all true? And why would they have done something like that?
All that is true. Certainly we lagged behind in technology. We lagged behind for many years. A question of resources, a question of making smart decisions. Those things were true. The infrastructure suffered. But I have to tell you that to me there is no way that is the fundamental reason that we suffered that kind of attack. Those are ancillary issues, not the fundamental issue.
Hey, Steve, Sean Hannity here. I wonder if we've even gotten the will to do all the right things now. I don't see the will to really secure Americans' borders. They're still wide open for enemies to cross through.
Yes.
I don't see the will to keep even the Patriot Act, because liberals have been hammering away at that. Right. And I don't see the will to profile people from certain countries. I mean, by not doing those things, aren't we creating vulnerabilities?
Absolutely, without question. This is not, I hate to use a hackneyed phrase, this is not rocket science. The things that you have just ticked off, securing our borders, sharing intelligence, taking the fight to the enemy, those are the things we simply have to do. Now, I think we started down that road after 9/11. You're right. The question is, do we have the will to continue it? If we don't, we are doomed to suffer these same kind of attacks repeatedly. If we follow the course of action that we started, then we are going to win this. Now, winning it may certainly may not mean that we never suffer another attack again. Every war, you
Steve,
lose some battles.
I am concerned that it's going to take a second attack and a third attack before people really understand what it is that I think you probably understand and I think I understand. And that is, there are enemies that think they are doing God's will. And their numbers are in the millions that want to kill every American man, woman, and child. And they think God is instructing them to do it. Am I wrong? Are there millions?
No.
How many millions do you think there are?
It's impossible to put a precise number on it, but you're right. And that's what makes them extraordinarily dangerous. And that's been the
Give me your best guess. How many millions? I want to know.
There's no way I know how many millions, but even if it's 1 million or 2 million, that's a lot of people who hate you and want to kill you.
Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Coming up next, President Bush faced the press and the nation tonight. Will he quiet the criticism that's driving down his poll numbers? That's coming up on Hannity and Combs.
Multitasking is great, except when you're driving. Answer the cell phone, referee the kids in the back seat, drink your coffee. We all do it. But Allstate knows if you do it a little less, you're less likely to have an accident or get a ticket. Keep a safe record and Allstate can save you up to 20%. Safe drivers cost everyone less. They should pay less. That's Allstate, Stan. Are you in good hands?
Stop by Circuit City today and check out our huge selection of the latest TVs. From widescreens to plasmas, we have the TV you're looking for at a great low price. Right now, you'll get up to 10% off TVs $299 and up. Plus, pay no interest for 18 months on TVs $499 and up. Like this RCA 52-inch widescreen high-def TV, just $1299.99 before $75 instant savings. Get the TV you've always wanted today at Circuit City.
If you have a mobility problem and pre-qualify for a power chair, we'll deliver a new Hover-Round to your home. That's right. Unlike other mobility companies that offer deals too good to be true, our offer is straightforward. If you pre-qualify, we'll deliver a Hover-Round. At Hover-Round, we manufacture power chairs in the USA. Our complete line of power chairs and motorized scooters are the most comfortable, and they're built to last a lifetime.
Oh, I love it. It's best thing since the legs.
If you have Medicare or private insurance, our mobility specialists will come to your home and evaluate which Hover-Round is best for you. Over 30,000 doctors have prescribed Hover-Round power chairs, and in most cases, the costs were 100% covered.
It didn't cost me one single penny, and I now have my Hover-Round.
Why settle for a generic when you can own the name brand, a Hover-Round, for little or no money out of pocket? Call now to see if you pre-qualify.
My friends are always asking me for ringside seats at my spectacular fights. You know what I tell them? Stay home. Watch the fight on Boom. Because Boom's high-definition satellite service is so stupendous, it's better than being ringside. Take it away, Johnny!
See, the next era begins live in high definition. Saturday night, April 17th. 4 championship bouts featuring IBF champion Chris Bird battling it out against Andrew Galata. Plus 2-time WBA champion John Ruiz going up against Vasquez Oquendo.
What else is on Boom, Johnny?
Boom is weighing in with 3 times more high-definition programming than any of the competition. That's over 30 channels of HD action, including exclusive channels of movies, sports, music, and news you can't get anywhere else, along with all your favorite cable and local channels. To order, call 866-324-BOOM and get free installation with no upfront costs and get the fight for $1.
Because without Boom, your HD TV is just a TV.
And the election countdown continues. There you go, 203 days till George Bush is reelected, and we decide who's going to get the White House again. Meanwhile, President Bush's decision to go before the country tonight had some serious political implications. He's running as the national security candidate, but now with increasing violence in Iraq and terror concerns, are voters are they still going to support the president? We're joined now by Democratic strategist, Fox News political analyst Bob Beckel, and the editor of the great publication National Review, another Fox News political analyst, Rich Lowry. You wrote a great piece, Retroactive Hardliners, and you talk about the pre-9/11 Democrats. Explain that, because I think this fits into what the president was saying tonight.
Well, we have all these Democrats who've told us the doctrine of preemption is insane and a radical break with American history, a huge mistake, now saying that Bush, prior to 9/11, should have launched a preemptive attack in Afghanistan. We have these Democrats who spent years and decades creating these walls within the FBI, making it harder for the FBI and the CIA to cooperate, now being scandalized that there were any of these obstacles. Yeah. And this is entirely opportunistic on their part. These are people who are only hardliners in retrospect and in hindsight.
Let me go to our good friend, Mr. Beckel here. Mr. Beckel, it's similar to a point I was trying to make earlier tonight, and that is, you know, here the president is just getting this ridiculous examination, and I think the commission's been politicized to an unprecedented degree. And yet he acts based on the knowledge that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, because John Kerry told us he did, Bill Clinton told us he did, the French told us he did, the UN told us he did, and he acts after giving him 12 years and 17 resolutions, and now if he didn't act and something happened, you would have blamed him for that. This man cannot win with you guys on the left. So I guess he's just got to ignore you all and defeat you politically.
Well, maybe that'll be the case, but I can tell you I learned one thing tonight. I learned why George Bush doesn't give primetime press conferences. You're going to think this is partisan, but that may have gone down as the worst press conference by a president I've ever seen.
That's
if you walked away from there,
silly.
if you walked away, wait a second. Wait, let me explain why now. Hold it for a second. By the way, I think this 9/11 Commission ought to get about the business of doing what it's supposed to do, which is make recommendations. All right, so we're not in disagreement there.
We're really short. I want to get back to
for George. Wait a second. For George Bush to say that Iraq is going to change the face of the world is one of these neocon dreams that his own father called ridiculous.
I agree with you, Bob.
And then to say that he wished, his only wish was he had a Homeland Security Department before 9/11, and he opposed it for 2 months after 9/11.
Let me go to Richard.
What are you going to do? You're going to follow this guy into the gates of hell? I mean, come on.
Let me go to Richard. Who are the Democrats who are now calling for we should have preemptively struck Afghanistan? Who's saying that?
That's the clear implication. Hold on, Alan. That's the clear implication of these hearings. That's the implication of what Richard Clark.
No one said that.
Richard Clark. Hold on, Alan. Richard Clark said we should have bombed Afghanistan. Who is the hero of every liberal now? Richard Clark.
I have not heard liberals say it. First of all, Richard Clark's not a liberal. Richard Clark
Yes,
is
he's
not
the
a partisan.
hero. He's the hero of the
The minute
liberals.
somebody disagrees with this White House or has the temerity to say something negative, they're a liberal. I didn't hear anybody say we should attack Afghanistan. I think what they're saying is we should have been on guard. We should have had more awareness. I don't think anybody could have stopped 9/11. But to say, no, I don't hear anybody saying that. Richard, I'd like to know who's saying it.
Richard Clark said we should have bombed Afghanistan. He has been held up as a hero by the left and by you. You're a liberal. Richard Clark's not. And you've been holding up as a hero.
Yeah.
This guy who is in favor of a preemptive attack in Afghanistan.
And we'll get back to Bob Becker. Bob is a big liberal, big capital L lib. Right, Bob? We'll get back to you in a minute.
I want to answer that.
We'll continue on the other side. By the way, you're going to want to wake up early tomorrow morning because Kathy Lee Gifford is hosting Fox and Friends, and guess who's going to be their special guest? Me. I will. Anyway, you're watching the Network America's Trust for real journalism with fair and balanced. As always, thank you for being with us.
Every investor wants to get ahead. Every investor has a destination. The job at Janus is getting every investor closer. Janus is delivering, pushing hard for performance, offering more investment choices. Janus is working to earn every investor's confidence, every step of the way. Get there. Janus Capital Group.
So, how about this one?
We did say no ranches, right?
Yeah. Well, plenty more where that came from. This next one is more of a colonial-inspired ranch.
It's still a ranch.
Not working with the Century 21 agent. Pledge point number 13. Century 21 agents only show you houses you want to see.
This one's more of a Tudor-inspired ranch.
No, it's not.
Just one of the ways to help reduce the stress of buying real estate. Century 21, real estate for your world.
That's me. And this is Kate. She's just like me. First bike ride, first prom. Then my little girl grew up. Around then, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Still, things were looking up. Until I turned 50. I felt 90.
For some, there's Remicade. Remicade relieves the pain of RA and helps stop further damage to your joints. Your doctor may add Remicade if you're on methotrexate already and not responding well. Remicade is not for everyone. Certain people with heart failure should not take Remicade. Serious, sometimes fatal infections such as TB have been reported. Your doctor should evaluate your risk of infection. Tell your doctor right away if you develop any sign of an infection while on Remicade. There is a risk of serious infusion reactions which may include hives, difficulty breathing, and low blood pressure. Call today and talk to your rheumatologist.
Last year, Kate was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And she's so young. At least she won't suffer like I did.
The system is broken. The system has collapsed.
America is facing a full-blown epidemic. Why are thousands of doctors just walking off the job? And could yours be next?
I had to close my practice for 6 months.
We expose the sickening truth behind this medical meltdown that could cost you your life. Linda Bester hosts a Breaking Point special, Why Doctors Quit, Sunday.
And we're back on Hannity Combs. Bob Beckel, I don't think the president really addressed some key issues tonight. First of all, he, as you pointed out, wished he had a Homeland Security Department, didn't support it. Asked if he made any mistakes, said he couldn't think on his feet like that, made a joke about that. Didn't ask questions about a deadline, didn't answer questions about troop levels. I don't know what more information was imparted tonight that we didn't already know. Isn't that the purpose of a news conference?
Yeah, you would think so, but and I don't think we learned much at all from it. But let me just make one comment about Rich Lowry. You know, Rich, you guys, there's not one of us on the Democratic side who do not now support the president staying in Iraq. For you, like Ann Coulter, when she wrote that book, Treason, could never name somebody who, on the Democratic Party, who was supposedly a traitor. You to say that we were wanting to bomb Afghanistan is a form of McCarthyism, and you ask us, come on, Rich, look, you know, you're the, you represent the worst. You ask us to unite. Wait a second.
Let me respond.
We don't have enough time. Let him respond.
Let me respond. Dick Clark has been held up as a hero by everyone on the left.
Yeah, not by me.
Let me finish,
let him
Bob.
respond.
Just let me finish. What was Dick Clark advocating that was so important prior to 9/11? Bombing Afghanistan. So if you think Dick Clark was crazy and that was a stupid idea, good. You can say so, and Alan can say so, and all the liberals can disavow him. But that is not what they've been doing. They've been doing to this point.
You better be careful. You guys on the right are dividing this country to the point where you want us to be united behind the president. Lowry, we go by your rules, and you're going to find what division's about.
You guys have politicized the war, and I've given you opportunities to condemn Howard Dean saying the president knew about 9/11. Kennedy called the president.
Did you ever hear that out of me?
Al Gore screeching that George Bush betrayed America. Are you embarrassed by your party?
Do you find anything?
Are you embarrassed by your party?
Absolutely not. I want to ask you this. Are you ever embarrassed by George Bush? Do you ever think he does anything wrong?
I got to tell you, I disagree with him on immigration, campaign finance, and spending.
It's good to know that Richard Clark supports Richard Clark in
Afghanistan.
This
guy over a cliff.
We got to go, guys.
And Lowry, we've heard enough of those allegations. They should back him up.
That's all the time we have left. Unfortunately, Greta Van Susteren is standing by to tell us what's coming up on the record. Special late edition of On the Record tonight. Greta, go ahead.
Yeah, and Alan, I think it's a good idea that Sean and Bob aren't in the same studios.
Yeah, they're still going on.
Yeah, this goes on.
They're still talking. The show keeps going.
No, but I should tell Bob, just go to the green room and Sean will be calling you.
But they're going to keep talking. Go ahead, Greta. What's happening tonight?
Tonight, President Bush, he's very blunt. He is not backing down in Iraq. Fox's Wendell Goler is at the White House with the details. Wendell?
Greta, the president used his first formal news conference since Saddam Hussein was captured in December to try and strengthen the country's resolve after what he called a tough past few weeks in Iraq. Mr. Bush said that things, he spoke as the coalition forces faced their worst month since the end of major combat operations a year ago. 83 soldiers killed. The president said the U.S. will stay the course in Iraq. He said what coalition forces are facing doesn't deserve to be called a rebellion, and he said it doesn't have the support of most of the Iraqi people.
The violence we have seen is a power grab by these extreme and ruthless elements. It's not a civil war. It's not a popular uprising. Most of Iraq is relatively stable. Most Iraqis, by far, reject violence and oppose dictatorship.
The president said if we miss the June 30th deadline for returning sovereignty to the Iraqi people, they will feel betrayed and there will be more attacks. His aides very much want Americans to see that date as the beginning of the end of the U.S. military deployment. But at the same time, he all but begged General John Abizaid, the head of Central Command, to ask for more troops if he needs them. The U.S. had hoped to reduce the deployment in Iraq, but the president said if Abizaid wants troops to stay, they will.
I'm constantly asking him, does he have what he needs? Whether it be in troop strength or in equipment. He and General Sanchez talk all the time. And if he makes the recommendation, he'll get it.
On the September 11th investigation, the president declined to apologize for the government's failure to prevent the attacks. He said Osama bin Laden is to blame. He explained his commitment, or his comment, pardon me, that he didn't feel a sense of urgency before 9/11, referred to urgency to kill Osama bin Laden. He said he felt a great outrage about the al-Qaeda leader after the 9/11 attacks. And he admitted he found out in testimony today that the FBI's claim in a briefing he received in August of 2001 that there were 70 al-Qaeda field investigations underway was wrong.
I heard about that today, obviously, and my response to that was I expect to get valid information. As the ultimate decision maker for this country, I expect information that comes to my desk to be real and valid.
The president will shift gears tomorrow. He meets with Israeli Prime Minister Sharon, who will talk about his plan to withdraw from Gaza, and then it's back to talking tough about Iraq on Friday, when the president holds a news conference with British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Greta?
Wendell, thank you. Joining us from Omaha is Republican Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa, and joining us from Chicago is Democratic Senator John Corzine of New Jersey. Senator Grassley, since this is your party's president, what was the president's goal tonight, and in your mind, did he achieve it?
I think the president's goal, first of all, was to make the people realize that as a result of the last 2 weeks, where there's been a lot more turmoil in Iraq than anybody could have predicted, that he's taking it serious. It's a somber situation, but it's something that we have to see our way through because we made a decision to go to war. And you never make a decision to go to war unless you go to war to win, because you don't have any business putting your men and women on the battlefield if you don't intend to win. And that in the sense that we're there until we accomplish the goal, a little bit like in 1993, we went into Yugoslavia without UN approval, but to be peacekeepers, and we're still keeping the peace after 10 years in Yugoslavia.
All right, an opposing party, Senator John Corzine, your thoughts of the president's press conference?
Well, first of all, I think the president was trying to reassure the nation in a time when things really are in a fairly chaotic state. I thought it was appropriately somber, but I thought it was a very shallow presentation, to be honest with you. It was a repetition of everything the president has already said. I didn't find anything new. I didn't see any definition to the question of this June 30 sovereignty date. Who are we going to hand it over to? What are their authorities going to be? What is their basis of legitimacy? And I thought some of the answers with regard to issues like troop strength and the role of the United Nations, well, you'll find out who's going to be in charge sovereignty-wise, and we'll leave it to Brahimi, just don't fit with the seriousness of this situation. And frankly, think it undermines the credibility.
Let me ask Senator Grassley that question. Senator Grassley, the president didn't answer specifically to whom we're going to hand over the authority on June 30th. Is there a reason why he has not given us the precise information?
Well, it seemed to me it's very obvious. A preliminary constitution's been written, the provisional government's in place, and it would have to be turned over to the provisional government. It's my understanding that it's at that point when the provisional government then looks to the writing of a permanent constitution, maybe with another group of people from Iraq writing it, and with eventually leading to the adoption of that constitution and a parliamentary body elected by the people of Iraq. It's pretty obvious.
Then let me go back to Senator Corzine. Senator Grassley says it's obvious it's the provisional government. Is that not satisfactory or definitive enough for you, sir?
What is the provisional government? Who is that? Is that the governing council just transitioning from one role picked by the United States and following on as the so-called sovereign provisional government? This is the problem we have is there have been no specific plans. We're doing this on the run. It is absolutely a continuation of the failed ability to actually be open and inclusive of not only the international community, but the broader community in Iraq that has led us to be in such an uncertain position about 2 months from this transition of power. First of all, it's a pretty artificial date to start with. You know, we didn't change the status of force. We did change the status of force rules for U.S. military and in working on security arrangements, which was just as fundamental as transition of sovereignty. We need to make sure that we stand back and put something together that is thoughtful, analytically consistent with how we're going to bring about security on the ground, political stability, not just for a short run, for a long period of time.
Right.
And I don't think there's any there tonight that helps us there.
Yeah. Greta, first of all, the criticism that June 30th is something artificial, maybe it's a little earlier than what the president wanted, but we're always criticized by the other party because we don't consult with other people helping us or other people who aren't helping us. And in this particular instance, it was moved up to satisfy some of our allies, particularly Great Britain, as an example, to get the job of transition done much sooner. And then the other point that was made a little bit earlier, that there wasn't anything new. Let me suggest to you that the president is often criticized because he doesn't subject himself enough to news conferences. And when he does, if there's nothing new that comes out in the president's remarks, then the journalists are failing the people of this country because they have that opportunity to bring everything out.
All right, Senators, stand by, if you will, both of you. We're going to continue this debate. And up next, a tense situation in Iraq at this hour. American soldiers are moving into position around the holy Shiite city of Najaf. Plus, the wife of an American held hostage in Iraq sends a message to his captors. And a rare sighting of the radical cleric the U.S. vows to take dead or alive. Plus, much more in the president's news conference tonight.
Now is the time. And Iraq is the place. in which the enemies of the civilized world are testing the will of the civilized world. We must not waver.
I'll take that.
Here's news for people with acid reflux disease. Across America, doctors who specialize in acid reflux disease have switched more patients to the purple pill, Nexium, than to any other prescription of its kind. The most common side effects of Nexium are headache, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Other serious stomach conditions may still exist. Is switching to Nexium right for you too? Ask your doctor today. Next time, Nexium.
There's a new prostate cancer treatment breakthrough. It's called CryoCare. CryoCare is the targeted freezing of cancer cells to destroy the cancer with extreme cold. It's proven 92% effective in long-term clinical studies.
Cryotherapy not only saved my life, but allowed us to keep our lives, and I'm thankful for that.
CryoCare is Medicare approved, requires no major surgery and no radiation. If you know someone with prostate cancer, call for this free guide on CryoCare. Call 1-800-913-CRYO.
My friends are always asking me for ringside seats at my spectacular fights. You know what I tell them? Stay home. Watch the fight on Boom. Because Boom's high-definition satellite service is so stupendous, it's better than being ringside. Take it away, Johnny!
See, the next era begins live in high definition. Saturday night, April 17th. 4 championship bouts featuring IBF champion Chris Bird battling it out against Andrew Galata. Plus 2-time WBA champion John Ruiz going up against Vasquez Oquendo.
What else is on Boom, Johnny?
Boom is weighing in with 3 times more high-definition programming than any of the competition. That's over 30 channels of HD action, including exclusive channels of movies, sports, music, and news you can't get anywhere else, along with all your favorite cable and local channels. To order, call 866-324-BOOM and get free installation with no upfront costs and get the fight for $1.
Because without Boom, your HD TV is just a TV.
Ashcroft points a finger. Hello, I'm David Folk Thomas. America's top law officer denies saying months before 9/11 that he did not want to hear about possible terror attacks. Attorney General John Ashcroft disputing that claim by the FBI's former acting chief, Thomas Picard, on a day both testified before the 9/11 Commission. Ashcroft insisting he and Picard spoke specifically about domestic terror threats. A department spokeswoman in Los Angeles says police are investigating a new allegation of child abuse against Michael Jackson. The alleged victim claiming to have been abused in the late 1980s. Jackson's lawyer says there are lots of baseless rumors and he is unaware of a new investigation. The wife of Arizona Senator John McCain could be leaving a Phoenix hospital later this week after suffering a small stroke Monday. Cindy McCain remains hospitalized in stable condition. Senator McCain says his wife's progress is excellent and that she will not need surgery. And there's light at the end of the tunnel for one of the best-known hotels on the Las Vegas Strip. The Bellagio will reopen Wednesday after fixing the problems that caused a crippling power outage Sunday. But the restaurants and retail shops won't open until Thursday at the earliest. Guests had to be moved to other hotels. And our next update is just after the top of the hour. On the Record returns right now.
Tommy, we love and miss you very much. We would also like to say to the persons who are holding him captive, our hopes are that you will release him unharmed and as soon as possible.
Kelly Hamill appealing to the kidnappers holding her husband Thomas Hamill hostage in Iraq. This as the U.S. military makes a disturbing discovery on a road near Baghdad. Fox's Mike Tobin is in Baghdad with the very latest from Iraq. Mike?
Well, Greta, 4 bodies believed to be those of missing American contractors have been found. Their convoy came under attack west of Baghdad last Friday. 7 contractors for Halliburton subsidiary Kellogg Brown and Root went missing at the time. Now, without releasing any identities, the Coalition Provisional Authority says the bodies found could be from that group of 7. No word on the fate of American Thomas Hamill, who was abducted following that attack. Now, this kidnapping trend continues in Iraq. 4 Italians are among the latest taken hostage in videotape. A group calling themselves the Mujahideen Brigades demanded that Italian forces withdraw from Iraq. A journalist for a French television news agency is reported kidnapped. Coalition spokesman Dan Senior says roughly 40 foreigners have been taken hostage in Iraq. It doesn't look like a ceasefire in Fallujah, but coalition forces have halted offensive operations. U.S. Marines took fire and returned a barrage of fire last night. The gun battle broke out after a building housing Marines was hit by mortar or rocket fire. 1 Marine was killed, possibly a second. And cameramen caught a rare shot today of the radical anti-U.S. Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. 1 day after U.S. generals said the objective of soldiers in Iraq was to capture or kill the radical cleric wanted for the murder of another Shiite minister, he appeared at the Imam Ali shrine in Najaf. Al-Sadr also made a statement to Hezbollah TV defying the U.S. presence in Iraq and saying he is prepared to sacrifice himself. U.S. troops and armor have massed around Najaf. Some 2,500 soldiers are prepared to go into Najaf to purge that city of al-Sadr's gunmen. Greta, back to you.
Mike, thanks. Let's bring back our senators. Republican Senator Charles Grassley of Iowa joins us from Omaha. Democratic Senator John Corzine of New Jersey joins us from Chicago. Senator Corzine, the president mentioned tonight an issue about troop strength. He said that General Abizaid, if he asks for more troops, that he will get them. What's your thought on troop strength in Iraq? What are we going to have to do about that?
Well, I think that at least what I have heard in testimony in front of Congress from anyone who is not actually in the chain of command has been that they thought there was greater troop strength needed. Actually, some people who were in the chain of command and then got fired, like Shinseki. I think it is something that generally I hear embraced by a broad cross-section of people who are involved in intelligence operations, involved in the military planning, and I think it's time to get it done. I think the president ought to be a forceful leader on that, as opposed to what I think was sort of a backhand layout for General Abizaid and Sanchez to be the ones that pick those numbers.
All right, well, let me switch gears to Senator Grassley. Senator Grassley, you have sent a letter dated yesterday to the director of the FBI, Mueller, and in the letter you want some questions answered. And I should add that Mueller came on right before September 11th, and so any of the wrath you might have in your letter really isn't directed at him. But essentially you say that former Director Free is complaining wrongfully when he said he didn't have sufficient funding in the 1990s. And in fact, your letter says the FBI did not suffer from a starvation of resources, but rather from a lack of a concerted effort against and focus on terrorism. Is that your view, sir?
Yes, without a doubt. And I believe I'm right because I'm quoting Inspector General, General Accounting Office, and the Congressional Research Service, that as far as counterterrorism money for the Justice Department, between 93 and the year 2003, it was increased by 132%, up to $4.6 billion.
Why is it that Director Free is making, I mean, your numbers are vastly different than what Director Free is saying. Is Director Free wrong, exaggerating, lying? What's the problem?
Well, first of all, the letter is meant to get the figures from the Justice Department as opposed to sources outside of the Justice Department. But I hope they verify what 3 other people have told me. Now, I think the issue here is that any government head always wants more money than what they get. But I want to say that we have given that big of an increase, and except for 2 years during that period of time, we even gave more money, the Congress gave more money than what the President requested.
Well, what would possess Director Free to make this complaint that essentially Congress underfunded the FBI for terrorism and didn't give them enough bodies in the shop?
Okay. Well, I think, first of all, that maybe even though we increased it dramatically, it was not enough to satisfy him. But it's easy to put blame on somebody else, the Congress, and I think it's because of the culture of the FBI, which for 7, 8 decades was targeted towards law enforcement and crime solving. And you don't prevent terrorism by crime solving, because you wait till a crime happens. If you want to prevent terrorism, you've got to be crime prevention, and they were in the process of changing over, but not doing it very fast.
All right,
until after September the 11th.
Senator Corzine, you may not have a dog in this fight. You didn't write this letter to the FBI, but do you have a thought on this dispute?
As, often, I believe Senator Grassley is on to something with regard to the blame game that is going on in Washington. There may be other circumstances that may explain why FBI Director Freeh chose to categorize that the counterterrorism was unfunded, but I think that if the case were made aggressively that we needed it for those purposes, I generally sense that there's a bipartisan element of support for protecting the American people. But, you know, we were fighting a war on drugs and a whole series of other things, and maybe some of those things were drawing money away. I don't know.
All right, well, I look forward to Senator Grassley. I hope you come back when you get the answers to your questions from the FBI and the Justice Department, sir. Thank you both. Up next, did President Bush make his case tonight and silence his critics on Iraq? Plus, what allowed bin Laden's al-Qaeda to roam freely in the U.S. before September 11th? I'll ask 9/11 Commission member Bob Kerrey.
In the last year, cable rates have increased more than 5 times the rate of inflation. Excessive? We think it's piggish. Don't let the pig in. Switch to Dish Network Satellite TV and save. Get over 60 channels, all in 100% digital delivery for as low as $29.99 a month, including your local channels, your local news, weather, sports, and more. Call now or visit a local participating retailer.
Who let the pigs in?
Call today and get the digital home advantage from Dish Network. That's satellite TV for the whole house with free standard professional installation in up to 4 rooms. There's no equipment to buy and no commitment. With Dish Network, get great channels like ESPN, Lifetime, USA Network, the Discovery Channel, and much more. Get premium movie packages like HBO, Showtime, Cinemax, Stars, and 32 channels of pay-per-view. What's more, call now and get Dish Video on Demand service. You can pause and replay live TV. Plus, you can record up to 100 hours of your favorite shows without videotape and fast forward through what you don't want to see.
That's it! I'm calling Dish Network.
There's never been a better time to switch to Dish Network. Get satellite TV in your whole house with no equipment to buy and no commitment. Over 60 channels, including local channels, for as low as $29.99 a month. Call now or visit a local participating retailer and dump cable today.
I'm Matthew Lesko, and my new book will tell you how to tell bill collectors to go shove it. My new book shows you 4,000 government programs that you can use to pay your bills and get out of debt forever. Get $2,000 to pay your rent or mortgage, or $600 to pay your phone bill, or even $7,000 to pay your credit card bills. I've been researching government grants for over 25 years, and government officials don't even know about these programs. And you've never seen a book that's so easy to use. Here's a program to pay for your prescription drug bills, or a program to pay for your living expenses, or programs to pay for your housing bills, apartment bills, or even your student loans. Over 80% of the people in the United States, including millionaires, are eligible. Isn't it about time you get rid of your debt once and for all? If you don't use these programs, somebody else will. So call now and get free money to pay your bills.
Call 1-800-593-9669 now.
Is there anything we could have done to stop the attacks? Of course I've asked that question, as have many people of my government. Nobody wants this to happen to America. And the answer is that had I had any inkling whatsoever that the people were going to fly airplanes into buildings, we would have moved heaven and earth to save the country. Just like we're working hard to prevent a further attack.
President Bush just hours ago taking questions from the media on the mission in Iraq. Joining us in Washington, Bill Christo, editor of the Weekly Standard, and Cece Conley of the Washington Post. Cece, how tough were the questions, and did the President answer every single question fully and thoroughly? And that may be redundant.
The President did not answer every question. I don't know about fully and thoroughly, but there are some that he just absolutely ducked. A couple of them, one I have to give the plug, my colleague Mike Allen asked him why it was that both he and Vice President Cheney must appear before the 9/11 Commission together, a little bit of sort of a buddy movie feel to it. He completely ignored that question. He was asked a couple of times, upon reflection, what sort of mistakes did he think he had made, or if he took personal responsibility, or he felt any need to apologize.
Why did he ask those questions? I mean, I actually thought, I mean, that wasn't getting any information out. I mean, I can see the tough questions are, why are you going in there with Cheney, and are we going to be, and is June 30th really a hard date, and what are we doing in Iraq? But I mean, you know, where have you messed up?
Except that it was interesting in that he basically said, gee, you stumped me. I wish I had gotten that question in advance, which you would think that given that he's had 2.5 years time to reflect on 9/11, he might have had some thoughts.
But I mean, like, we're supposed to, the President at least is supposed to show some strength at these press conferences, and I mean, actually, that didn't bother me as much as I thought that we didn't get all the answers on, for instance, why is he, Bill, going in there with Vice President Cheney before the 9/11? Why not go separately? He's giving his enemies ammunition.
Maybe you should have Vice President Cheney with him at these press conferences, too. They should always go places in tandem, you know. It's kind of the safety in numbers. Well, we know why he's doing it. He's doing it because he's worried that if he does it separately, and the whole thing, the 9/11 Commission is degenerated, I think, into such a gotcha exercise that if they interview the President one place, then the Vice President the next day, and the President says something slightly different from the Vice President,
they're not recording this, but they're
taking notes. There's going to be there'll be a transcript, I think. There'll be a note taker.
Actually, I don't even think there is a transcript. I think one person's allowed to take notes or something.
Well, but the commissioners will be there. Anyway, I don't know why they're doing it. They didn't consult me on it. I don't know that it's necessary, but I don't know that it matters much. I think on the 9/11 Commission stuff, he's fine. I mean, at the end of the day, people are not going to decide that George W. Bush was culpably negligent, I don't believe, in his handling of terrorism issues before 9/11. His administration was not doing everything it could have been doing in retrospect, nor was the Clinton administration. I think that ends up washing out. Iraq, I think, was the big issue in this press conference. That's what he devoted his entire opening statement to. And I thought on Iraq, he did one thing very well. He showed resolve, which he really is necessary. I mean, he was a foreigner watching that, an Iraqi watching that, an American watching that, does not now think that we're going to pull out of Iraq. So that was extremely important. I would say in terms of explaining what we're going to do to win, there I don't think he did as well as he could have.
Well, what is the answer? I mean, how do you explain that?
Well, I think we need, I mean, it sort of depends on what you think. I think we need to radically increase the number of troops. I think it's a serious crisis, not just a bump in the road. I don't know that the President agrees with that. He left the option open to increase the number of troops considerably. But generally speaking, I'd say there were more general expressions of we can't lose than a theory of victory, an explanation of how it is we're going to win.
Sure. I agree with that there were not many specifics. Interesting, Greta, in terms of Iraq, I think there were a certain number of very familiar kind of Bush statements. We're going to stay the course, these people love freedom and want their independence.
But how do we achieve that, I think, is what we're looking for.
He didn't get at the how do we achieve that. The other thing, though, that was striking, I thought, this evening, were a couple of new kinds of themes that you heard from President Bush. First of all was the fact that he said more than half a dozen times, these are tough times. He recognized over and over again. He actually said at one point...
Was he asked 6 times that question that would lead to that answer? I mean,
no. As a matter of fact, Greta, it was one of the very first sentences out of his mouth in that opening statement. That's how he began, by saying, these have been tough weeks. He also made a comment, nobody likes to see dead people on television screens. That's a striking acknowledgement from a president who normally has really put forth this very confident, even upbeat, optimistic kind of air. The other thing that he made references to were the Iraqis being occupied. He has steadfastly stayed away from that phrase, and tonight he said, they don't like being occupied, and I wouldn't like being occupied either. Those are surprising admissions out of this president.
30 seconds, and I'll pick you up when we come back from break, but you were shaking your head.
No, I agree. I think these are tough times was an important thing to say. It lays the predicate for him to then say, not that this president will ever admit any mistakes, but to say, you know what, we did some things wrong over the last year, we're going to fix them. If we need more troops, we're going to send in more troops, and we're going to do so aggressively. So I think he's laid the groundwork for some change of course in Iraq, which is good.
Bill, Cece, stand by. We're going to take a quick break. And coming up, what surprised the 9/11 Commission most about today's testimony? 2 members of the commission are here. And later, the showdown with Muqtada al-Sadr. American troops are closing in on the Iraqi cleric as we speak. We'll have breaking news live from Iraq.
There's a new prostate cancer treatment breakthrough. It's called CryoCare. CryoCare is the targeted freezing of cancer cells to destroy the cancer with extreme cold. It's proven 92% effective in long-term clinical studies.
Cryotherapy not only saved my life, but allowed us to keep our lives, and I'm thankful for that.
CryoCare is Medicare approved, requires no major surgery and no radiation. If you know someone with prostate cancer, call for this free guide on CryoCare. Call 1-800-913-CRYO.
If you are one of the millions of Americans who has trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, there are sleep solutions. Call this number now to receive your Sleep Solutions Information Kit. This information can help you better understand your specific sleep issues. There's also a sleep diary to help you keep track of your sleep habits and describe them to your doctor. We've also included a valuable offer. One phone call can start you on a path to help you regain a regular sleep cycle and help restore the rhythm of your life. It's this rhythm that helps keep us in balance by sleeping at night and waking each morning, refreshed and ready to greet the day. Call the toll-free number now to help you get started. You can also visit us online at www.shuteye.com. The Sleep Solutions Information Kit can help you take the first step toward rediscovering and restoring the rhythm of your life. Call for your Sleep Solutions Information Kit now.
Sunday at 8, a master military strategist, a fierce soldier, and a brilliant diplomat.
You give Ike a job, he got the job done.
From small-town America, he became one of our nation's greatest presidents. Now we take an intimate look at the life of Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Join me, Ollie North, for the next episode of War Stories on the Fox News Channel.
Fox News Channel's acclaimed series, War Stories with Oliver North, is now available on videotape. Call now, 1-800-933-0760.
My message today to those in Iraq is we'll stay the course. We'll complete the job. My message to our troops is we'll stay the course and complete the job, and you'll have what you need. And my message to the loved ones who are worried about their sons, daughters, husbands, wives, is your loved one is performing a noble service for the cause of freedom and peace.
Back now with more on the President's speech tonight with Bill Kristol, the Weekly Standard, and Cece Connolly of the Washington Post. Bill, take it away.
Well, just on that, I mean, I think that one of the more effective things in the press conferences, especially if you like the President in the first place, is to see him sort of being emotional and sincere and earnest, and he really is, and you feel he believes this. He's not being cynical. He thinks it's really important that we win in Iraq. He thinks it's important we stay the course. He thinks the sacrifices are worth it. They're worth honoring, and that part, I think, is impressive. The thing that bothered me the most at the press conference was, I don't know how to say this, it was a lack of presidential leadership. I mean, do we need more troops? Well, whatever General Abizaid asks for, he's going to get. Well, President Bush is the commander-in-chief, not General Abizaid. He's supposed to weigh the advice and the recommendations of many people, including General Abizaid, and make that decision. How should the handoff work on June 30th? Well, Mr. Brahimi from the UN, the former Algerian foreign minister, is there. He's going to work that out. What about the FBI and their reporting about the pre-9/11 investigations? Well, they're supposed to give me, the president, the right information. There's a certain passivity, I think, in terms of accepting recommendations from all these people who work for him. And I think when you're in a real crisis, as we are in Iraq, he needs to personally to make decisions. Now, maybe he is, and maybe publicly he's just being sort of deferential to his generals and to the UN representatives. But I think at this point he really needs to step up and make some key decisions.
That really is striking. You know, even tonight when he was asked about the reference in that now famous PDB of August 6, 2001, where there's an assertion that there were 70 ongoing FBI field reports, which we now are learning was definitely an exaggeration. And asked about it tonight, he sort of said, yeah, somebody mentioned that to me today. Yeah, I'll be waiting to get some information on that. Well, gosh, I mean, why wasn't he or some of his other top leadership asking that question over the past 2.5 years?
Or you know what I would have done? I guess I would have taken the offensive more on that and say, look, you know, I'm not trying to duck anything because I've only been in office 8 months, but Congress is supposed to be overseeing these organizations. You know, where are they? They've been asleep at the wheel, too. I would have been more aggressive on that because I thought that he sort of thought, yeah, you know, I don't know.
Well, he's the chief executive, and I do think in private he is a pretty aggressive chief executive. When you talk to people in the White House, they say he makes decisions, he pushes people. In public, he's decided this kind of somewhat standoff. I take advice. Abizaid, he's the general. He tells me how many troops we need. Brahimi, he's the UN guy. He'll work out the transition. But I'm worried about that, because the truth is Abizaid, for example, has informally gotten every signal in the world from the Secretary of Defense, Don Rumsfeld, that he wasn't supposed to ask for more troops. And we don't have enough troops, and we haven't had enough troops for a long time. The president's now going to have to change that, and I think it's better to change it fast and in a big way than gradually to increase the troops and maybe not deal with the problem as effectively as we could.
And as sending more troops, what does that do politically, Cece, if he's got to, pull the trigger on that one, send more troops? First of all, I don't know where we're going to get them, but assuming we have them.
Right. Well, I think the first thing that's already occurring is that some are staying longer than they had believed.
Which is not going to make some of those people particularly happy who are over there who are getting the extension.
Certainly not.
I'm getting emails from the relatives already.
Absolutely. That's what I was just about to say. Some of those family members that thought they were going to be seeing husbands and wives any day now, that's going to be extremely difficult. I think that if it is possible to increase the number of troops and rapidly get the situation back under control, get that security that President Bush was talking about tonight, politically that will be not only fine but a good maneuver. If, though, this continues to drag on through the summer, approaching convention time, it will be an extremely difficult political situation.
It's still better to win with more troops than to lose with fewer. Look, the fundamental criticism here is of Don Rumsfeld, I think, and I think the president should hold the Secretary of Defense, with all due respect, accountable. The president stressed today, we're now on a war footing. Since 9/11, we're on a war footing. Before that, we weren't. When in human history have we gone from peace to wartime and not increased the size of the peacetime military? We are now going to have a tough time coming up with the two divisions that are necessary. We're going to have to draw down in Korea. The third ID, which just came home and is going to have to be reconstituted and parts of it sent back. It's going to be a mess. And it's going to be a mess because President Bush says we went to war after 9/11, but Don Rumsfeld had these theories about how we didn't need ground troops anymore, and he was wrong.
Bill, Cece, thank you both very much. And up next, did red tape leave us wide open for the bloodshed of September 11th? Two members of the commission go on the record. And later, why is the manhunt underway right now in Iraq for the cleric al-Sadr so risky? We're going to take you live to Baghdad.
The 9/11 hearings taking center stage in Washington, while on Wall Street, fears of higher interest rates rocking stocks, the Dow diving 134 points. Wall Street reacting to more good news on Main Street. Retail sales are booming. That has investors worrying that the Fed may have to hike interest rates soon to rain on the parade. Market watchers say that a hike before the election could hurt President Bush. Intel could impact stocks on Wednesday. The chip giant reporting earnings that slightly disappointed the street. Stay with Fox.
9/11 testimony. Good morning. I'm David Folk Thomas. Some of the top U.S. intelligence and Justice Department figures were on Capitol Hill as another day of public hearings were held before the federal panel investigating the 9/11 attacks.
The FBI, as you know, before September 11, had 3.5% of the federal government's anti-terrorism budget. And it's no news to anybody that for many, many years, as your executive director recounted, the resource issue and the legal authority issue certainly limited what we were able to do before September 11th.
When I came into office, I learned that the FBI didn't know what it had. We found stuff in files here that the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing.
Former FBI Director Louis Freeh claiming the FBI had a very effective counterterrorism program prior to 9/11. Former Attorney General Janet Reno testifying the FBI faced huge challenges in learning how to use all the information it collected on criminal and intelligence matters. John Kerry attending a fundraiser in his home state. The Massachusetts Democrat criticizing President Bush's proposed constitutional ban on same-sex marriage. Kerry also slamming the president's policies on terrorism before Mr. Bush's TV appearance. Kerry releasing his tax returns showing over $90,000 in federal taxes paid on almost $400,000 income. Vice President Dick Cheney visiting China. He says relations there are in good shape, but Washington and Beijing still have differences over Taiwan, Hong Kong, and human rights issues. China's vice president reportedly urging America to stop selling defensive weapons to Taiwan. Cheney's Asian tour also taking him to Japan and South Korea. The heir to the Coors brewing fortune, Peter Coors, officially launching his bid for the Colorado Senate. The Republican candidate says his agenda will include supporting President Bush's tax cuts and national security plan. Coors faces a tough primary fight against former three-term Congressman Bob Schaefer. A holy dip in India and a lion takes hydrotherapy in England as we go around the world in 80 seconds, courtesy of the Fox Report.
Brazil, more than 1,000 military police moving into two of Rio's shanty towns to stop a drug war. Cops say the fighting has killed 10 people, including some innocent bystanders. Gangs use fireworks to warn members when police move into the area. The drug war started when one gang tried to take control of the cocaine and marijuana trade. India, more than 500,000 Hindus as well as some Sikhs observing their new year by bathing in the Ganges River. The goal here, cleanse and purify the soul. Legend holds the Ganges flowed to earth from heaven to wash away the sins of humanity. Germany, Sandra Koppen is a two-time world champion sumo wrestler. She's training to win a gold medal in judo at the Olympics this summer, but her dream is to make sumo an Olympic sport. The United Kingdom, a keeper at a wildlife park in Kent has his hands full. He's rehabbing this 9-month-old lion named Samira. Her mother accidentally severed the tendons in Samira's leg while trying to carry the cub. The lion's been getting hydrotherapy to try to build up the muscles in her shoulder. The vets say Samira may not fully recover, but now stands a better chance of living a normal life. And that's a wrap on this Fox trip around the world in 80 seconds.
And San Francisco Giants outfielder passing his godfather, Willie Mays, for third on baseball's all-time home run list. That's Barry Bonds we're talking about, belting career homer number 661 in the 7th inning Tuesday night. Stay with us. On the Record continues right now.
Testimony before the 9/11 Commission centered on the FBI and CIA today with the testimonies of former Attorney General Janet Reno, former FBI Director Louis Freeh, and Attorney General John Ashcroft. Joining us are two members of the commission. Slade Gorton is a former Republican senator from Washington, and Bob Kerrey is a former Democratic governor of Nebraska, as well as a former United States senator. Nice to see both of you. Senator Kerrey, first to you. Today we heard that beginning at least on July 27th, the FAA issued several security directives to U.S. air carriers. This is in the summer of 2001. Is there any information that the FAA followed up to see if the airlines made sure that the planes were safe?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it may be the commission's got to recall the FAA and the airlines to find out what it was they were told to do, because everything that I've seen shows that on the 11th September, not only were we not at a heightened state of alert, we were very relaxed. We were not prepared for a single hijacking, let alone a multiple hijacking which occurred.
I think Bob is entirely correct in that statement. I suppose the airlines would say, yeah, they said something might go on, but they didn't give us anything specific enough on which to act. But it is pretty clear they didn't do anything.
But typically, Senator Gordon, when you talk about threats to airlines, the first thing we all think about is hijacking. So even if it's non-specific, would you not think that if you got a warning from the federal government and you run an airline, that the first thing you try to do is up security as it relates to hijacking?
Yeah, I would. The airlines felt, and I think the government, the FAA felt, that they had licked hijacking. You know, we hadn't had a hijacking of a U.S. airliner for something like 11 years. And as a matter of fact, the instructions were that if you're hijacked, cooperate. Now, I want to make that clear. The instructions on September 11th was, if your airplane is hijacked, cooperate. You'll lose lunch, you'll land in Havana, but don't fight. which of course was 100% the wrong policy.
Except if you back it up a bit, if you are the airline, you don't even want to get to the hijacking, you worry about the security on the ground so that you even beat it to hijacking, and the airlines at least then were in charge of the security on the ground, right or wrong?
Well, even look, you walk through an airline terminal in 2001 and check on an airplane and say the word hijacking and get arrested. So the airlines say, well, gee, we thought that we had this problem licked, but there were a lot of non-specific indicators that hijacking might be a modus operandi for Al-Qaeda. And fundamentally, the other problem is that Al-Qaeda is not just a terrorist organization. This is a part of an Islamic army that not only had declared war on us, that had demonstrated very sophisticated military operations on the 7th of August 1998 and again on the 12th of October 2000 in Aden against the USS Cole. So this was an army, and we let them come into the United States. We didn't do everything we needed to do to round them up, and this was an army that had indicated that they were going to try all kinds of things. I just think that we should have been at a much higher state of alert in our airports than we were.
Several of our witnesses have said they were at war with us, but we weren't at war with them. And that is a true statement. But that begs the question. And the question was, why weren't we at war with them when their threats were so explicit and so extreme?
Right. And what I've heard over the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks is one excuse after another. Today it was the wall. The wall kept me from doing it. Before that, it was, you know, we weren't sure that Al-Qaeda hit the Cole.
And the other one today was we didn't have enough money.
We didn't have enough money.
Did they have enough money?
Yes,
they had enough
money. That's the all-purpose excuse. We didn't have enough money. We didn't have enough resources, not just for security, for parks, for welfare, for anything else. We don't have enough money. Well, boy, we spent an awful lot of billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars, and we didn't get very much for it.
Well, I don't mean to hang up on this airline thing, though, but I think once a notice goes out to an airline, there may be a problem. Even if it's non-specific. Prior to September 2001, you would have thought the first thing to do is tighten up security on the ground so you was getting on those planes.
But you get two things here. It isn't just, what do the airlines do? What kind of additional security precautions did they take? But they were going to take those precautions against an Islamic army that we knew was in the United States. Again, this is not just another terrorist group. These guys were called the Jihad in 1998.
Did the airlines have these names, though?
Yeah, they had some of the names. I mean, some of them popped up. I guess 9 out of 19 popped up on it.
The FAA had a do-not-fly list that had fewer than 20 names on it. And a couple of hearings ago, we were told this much longer list of potential terrorists from the State Department. The FAA literally didn't know it existed.
All right, well, gentlemen, stand by. Up next, the specific warnings about bin Laden's al-Qaeda before 9/11. We'll tell you exactly how they were worded. Could anyone have predicted what would happen that ominous September day? And later, a frightening scene in Iraq as our troops close in on al-Sadr. Plus, a disturbing find outside Baghdad. We're going to take you live to Baghdad.
Would you like a part-time business that earns a full-time income? Here's the most exciting new business in decades. It will completely change the way America rents movies and video games. It's a mini video store without employees or overhead. Over 600 movies and games, the same hot new releases as a chain video store, but at a lower price and a more convenient location. 80% of all households rent movies regularly. Now they won't have to make a special trip, wait in line, and pay high fees. The movie rental business generated $8 billion last year in the U.S. alone. As an owner, all you do is stock your machine with the most popular new releases. The money is deposited daily right into your bank account. American Entertainment secures your locations for you, and the best ones are still available. Don't miss out. Call for your free information kit now.
Larry, it's time we got more life insurance. I've been looking. I can't believe how much it can cost.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need $1 million policy, just enough to help with the bills we'll leave behind. They're the loans and the credit cards and probably medical expenses, too. And I hear the average funeral costs more than $6,000. We really need more life insurance.
Sure do.
But where can we find affordable coverage at our age with your health?
It's not a problem. We belong to AARP.
Whether you're looking to supplement an existing policy or buying protection for the first time, you cannot be turned down for AARP Guaranteed Acceptance Life. You never have to visit a doctor or answer any health questions. If you're an AARP member between the ages of 50 and 80, your acceptance is guaranteed for up to $15,000 in affordable lifetime protection. With this plan, rates never increase just because you grow older. You can't be singled out for a rate increase. What's more, this insurance is yours to keep even if you live to be 100. And the AARP life insurance program is endorsed and monitored by AARP. No wonder so many people over 50 turn to the program to get the coverage they need. To find out more about AARP Guaranteed Acceptance Life, just dial this toll-free number and request free information by mail. There's no risk or obligation.
Receive a free calculator just for calling. Call 1-800-459-9318. Not an AARP member. We'll tell you how to join. Call 1-800-459-9318.
Thanks to the AARP life insurance program, we can get life insurance without a medical exam or a big price tag.
That's right.
All we have to do is pick up the phone.
Oh, don't bother. I already called and got this free information by mail.
Call now for free information and a free gift. Call 1-800-459-9318.
The simple fact of September 11th is this. We did not know an attack was coming because for nearly a decade our government had blinded itself to its enemies. Our agents were isolated by government-imposed walls, handcuffed by government-imposed restrictions, and starved for basic information technology. The old national intelligence system in place on September 11th was destined to fail.
We're back with more in today's testimony on 9/11 with Commission members Slade Gordon and Bob Kerrey. Let me read to you from your transcript from today's hearings the name of some of the reports that were presented in the spring and summer of 2001. These were the headlines in the reports. Bin Laden planning multiple operations. Bin Laden public profile may presage attack. Bin Laden's network plans advancing. Bin Laden threats are real. Bin Laden planning high-profile attacks. Now, all those headlines seem quite alarming to me if I'm sitting there reading them. But were these headlines on intelligence reports that were getting in 2000?
Yeah, I mean, but then, and the headline didn't say where it's going to occur. It didn't say is he going to attack in the United States or outside the United States,
or how.
But it seems that.
But I don't think it's a reasonable presumption for those who are defending us to say they're only going to attack overseas. I think one of the big failures, again, both Clinton and Bush, was to say the attack's going to happen overseas.
But I think that I would take these headlines more seriously if this were something brand new. If the federal government's always getting these, then I think it's just another report.
Well, they weren't brand new, but nonetheless, they were treated with bureaucratically. Today, we heard a lot of criticisms about the FBI, which I think were justified. Tomorrow, we're going to hear a lot of criticisms about the CIA, which will probably be justified. But when you get right down to it, two of those people came to the United States and were known to have come to the United States by the CIA early in the year, and it wasn't until mid or late August that the FBI even got that message.
If we knew they were here in the United States, Al-Qaeda, why would we think that they were going to hit overseas and not here? What were they doing here if not to hit us?
Well, one presumes that they were here to hit us, but they weren't the only Al-Qaeda people anywhere in the world either.
Yeah, no, I think there should have been a balanced response to protect Americans, both in the United States and abroad. And again, this presumption is, gee, we were focusing all of our attention. That's what the most alarming thing we heard from James Garvey, the Federal Aviation Administrator, was everything was focused overseas. And I think there's no basis for that conclusion from what I've seen thus far. It's one of the reasons I'd like to get her back up, because I don't think there's any basis for that unless she said to me, gee, nobody told me that Al-Qaeda was inside the United States. If that's the case, then you got to go up a pay grade or two to find out why somebody didn't tell her. Why are you? What are the threats? What should you be worried about? What are the sorts of things you're looking for?
But the CIA and the FBI, both of which have intelligence responsibilities, aren't talking well enough to each other. That's a really serious problem.
Well, not just to each other, but in the FBI's case, You get this
Even
memo.
other FBI people.
Exactly. You get this memo coming out of Phoenix that goes to the New York headquarters, which was the office of origin for Al-Qaeda, and to the headquarters. And what's the answer? We didn't see it. We didn't see it till after 9/11. And what do they say? You better check out all these flight schools because we see very suspicious activities. And you got to think, if we were really looking at a domestic threat and that thing had gotten into the works in a hurry, that some of those hijackers would have had a heck of a time getting on the plane on 11 September.
Some of my viewers are complaining that Vice President Cheney and President Bush will be testifying or talking to you together. Why are they doing it together, Senator?
That was their offer. You know, you're dealing with the President and Vice President of the United States. The former Vice President and President testified separately, or rather spoke with us separately. Testified is probably too strong a word for it.
Because it's not under oath.
And under very, very generous circumstances. I think that the proof of this pudding is going to be, do we get our questions answered?
And do you have any objection to the two of them talking to you together as opposed to separately, Vice President?
No, I think what Slade just said at the end is exactly right. I mean, you got to be able to get our questions answered. I mean, if you're George Bush and you're Dick Cheney, and I ask you a question and the answers are all coming over here, or vice versa, you know, I've got to be able to separate and make sure that each of these individuals who had different sets of responsibilities are standing there taking at least questions, I think, from the chairman, the vice chairman, in some organized fashion. We've got to respect their time, but it does seem to me that we're going to need a separate stream of answers from them.
Thank you both, Senators. I appreciate it. Gentlemen, thanks. Up next, the U.S. military knows where he's hiding, and they're heading his way. Will al-Sadr fold like his comrades in Fallujah, or will he trigger deadly mayhem? A late-breaking update from Iraq is next.
So I went to the store to buy a grill last summer, and it was actually confusing. And when I got it home, it didn't work like I thought it would. It burned my hair off. And I ate a lot of charred, dry things that were supposed to be like meat. And then this year, it fell apart, which really bummed me out. So I decided to watch some TV. And I saw this commercial for Weber. And I almost cried because their grill had lots of stuff mine didn't. There was a number and a website, and I usually don't do stuff like that because once I bought this gutbuster thing. And it never really worked. But I was hungry and thought, what the heck? So I called the number, and they sent me information that made shopping for a grill a lot less confusing. I didn't know that under every steak is Weber's famous cooking system. And I didn't know that the burner tube should go all the way across the grill box, from side to side, so you get even heat across the grill, and your food gets evenly cooked all over. And I didn't know their inverted V-shaped flavorizer bars stop flare-ups and give your food that tasty grilled flavor. And I didn't know that every Weber grill comes with at least a 5-year, 50,000 burger warranty. And a toll-free hotline that I can call anytime, day or night, to talk with a certified barbecue expert. So I bought a Weber grill. And when I got it home and started it up, it sounded really cool. Then I made a steak. And it was like, wow, I never knew that steaks had juice. Call 1-800-211-0579 or log on to Weber.com. You can really learn something.
More breaking news around the nation. More global coverage as events unfold. More political reporting, fair and balanced. More Americans choose Fox News Channel over CNN, nearly 2-1. And more than MSNBC and Headline News combined. Fox News Channel is the most watched, most trusted name in cable news. Every story, every day, every time. The choice is clear. America's first choice is Fox News Channel, America's newsroom.
Tonight, the U.S. military has moved significant forces to the holy Iraqi city of Najaf. UPI reporter Mitch Prothero is in Baghdad with the very latest. Mitch, we're just hearing here in the United States on our what we call our urgent file on our computer that 2 U.S. Marines were killed in action in Iraq on Monday, 2 more on Tuesday. The U.S. military has just issued that. Do you have any information on these 4 Marines?
I don't have any information on specifically what happened to those Marines, but despite the ceasefire, there's been constant reports of low-level fighting around Fallujah and Ramadi where the Marines have been engaged.
All right. There have been bodies that have been recovered. The thought is, at least, that it might be for the civilian contractors who were ambushed last Friday. Do you know anything? Can you tell us about that?
Well, what we know about that is that they seem to have found 4 bodies in a shallow grave near where that convoy was hijacked. You know, one of those contractors has been seen alive on videotape from the insurgents, and you know, there had been reports that 6 others were missing, and at the time some people felt as though that might have meant that they'd been killed in action and that there was only 1 hostage. But as of this time, there's no word on the other 2.
So we don't know if Thomas Hamill, the one who's on videotape, and the deadline has passed for him. We don't know if he's dead or alive right now.
As of right now, there's no reason to think one way or the other. They really haven't made any demands other than to not go into Fallujah or to withdraw troops. But there's also been a ceasefire holding, so that may have been enough to have made his captors happy, at least in the short term. But we just don't know.
The 4 found in the shallow grave, do we know if they died during the ambush last Friday or whether they were killed subsequent?
I've been told that they were found very nearby the scene of the attack, and Muslims here, insurgents or otherwise, have a tendency to bury dead very quickly after incidents. So it's very hard to tell, but my understanding is they were found in the very general location of the fighting.
All right, Mitch, thank you very much for that report. And thank you for being with us tonight. Please send your comments to ontherecord@foxnews.com. Be sure to check out our daily blog at GretaWire.com. It'll give you an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at this show. Plus, log on to GretaPoll.com and get your opinion on the record. We want to hear what you have to say. We also want to hear from soldiers in Iraq, so write us. And I'll see you all again tomorrow. Until then, keep it here on America's Newsroom, Fox News Channel. Good night.
Good evening from Fox News in Washington. I'm Britt Hume. In just about a minute or so, President Bush will hold a primetime news conference from the East Room of the White House on the podium you see there. Before he takes questions from reporters, he will make an opening statement of unusual length. Subject, Iraq. For a preview, let's bring in Fox News senior White House correspondent Jim Angle, who is in the room there. Jim, what are we expecting to hear in this opening statement, and how long is it supposed to go?
Well, Britt, the statement will be 3 or 4 times longer than usual, probably some 15 minutes, and it is about Iraq, as you suggested. Obviously, the last few days have been very tough in Iraq, with more casualties there than any time since major combat ended. That naturally has raised lots of questions from his detractors about what comes next, what the administration plans to do, how it is likely to work out. The president is still determined to hand over power to the Iraqis on June 30th. There will be questions about that. Obviously, he's also determined to keep the American public behind this effort. Britt?
And I think, Jim, it's fair to suggest that we'll have some questions about what has been coming out of these 9/11 Commission hearings, which there was another one today. And there comes the president down the long walk and up onto the East Room podium, which has been the conventional venue for presidents to hold news conferences at the White House in prime time in the modern era. Here now, President Bush.
Thank you. Good evening. And before I take your questions, let me speak with the American people about the situation in Iraq. This has been tough weeks in that country. Coalition forces have encountered serious violence in some areas of Iraq. Our military commanders report that this violence is being instigated by 3 groups. Some remnants of Saddam Hussein's regime, along with Islamic militants, have attacked coalition forces in the city of Fallujah. Terrorists from other countries have infiltrated Iraq to incite and organize attacks. In the south of Iraq, coalition forces face riots and attacks that are being incited by a radical cleric named al-Sadr. He has assembled some of his supporters into an illegal militia and publicly supported the terrorist groups Hamas and Hezbollah. Al-Sadr's methods of violence and intimidation are widely repudiated by other Iraqi Shia. He's been indicted by Iraqi authorities for the murder of a prominent Shia cleric. Although these instigations of violence come from different factions, they share common goals. They want to run us out of Iraq and destroy the democratic hopes of the Iraqi people. The violence we have seen is a power grab by these extreme and ruthless elements. It's not a civil war. It's not a popular uprising. Most of Iraq is relatively stable. Most Iraqis, by far, reject violence and oppose dictatorship. In forums where Iraqis have met to discuss their political future, and in all the proceedings of the Iraqi Governing Council, Iraqis have expressed clear commitments. They want strong protections for individual rights. They want their independence. And they want their freedom. America's commitment to freedom in Iraq is consistent with our ideals and required by our interests. Iraq will either be a peaceful democratic country or it will again be a source of violence, a haven for terror, and a threat to America and to the world. By helping to secure a free Iraq, Americans serving in that country are protecting their fellow citizens. Our nation is grateful to them all and to their families that face hardship and long separation. This weekend at a Fort Hood hospital, I presented a Purple Heart to some of our wounded. I had the honor of thanking them on behalf of all Americans. Other men and women have paid an even greater cost. Our nation honors the memory of those who have been killed. And we pray that their families will find God's comfort in the midst of their grief. As I've said to those who have lost loved ones, we will finish the work of the fallen. America's armed forces are performing brilliantly, with all the skill and honor we expect of them. We're constantly reviewing their needs. Troop strength now and in the future is determined by the situation on the ground. If additional forces are needed, I will send them. If additional resources are needed, we will provide them. The people of our country are united behind our men and women in uniform. And this government will do all that is necessary to assure the success of their historic mission. One central commitment of that mission is the transfer of sovereignty back to the Iraqi people. We have set a deadline of June 30th. It is important that we meet that deadline. As a proud and independent people, Iraqis do not support an indefinite occupation, and neither does America. We're not an imperial power, as nations such as Japan and Germany can attest. We're a liberating power, as nations in Europe and Asia can attest as well. America's objective in Iraq is limited, and it is firm. We seek an independent, free, and secure Iraq. Were the coalition to step back from the June 30th pledge, many Iraqis would question our intentions and feel their hopes betrayed. And those in Iraq who trade in hatred and conspiracy theories would find a larger audience and gain a stronger hand. We will not step back from our pledge. On June 30th, Iraqi sovereignty will be placed in Iraqi hands. Sovereignty involves more than a date and a ceremony. It requires Iraqis to assume responsibility for their own future. Iraqi authorities are now confronting the security challenge of the last several weeks. In Fallujah, coalition forces have suspended offensive operations, allowing members of the Iraqi Governing Council and local leaders to work on the restoration of central authority in that city. These leaders are communicating with the insurgents to ensure an orderly turnover of that city to Iraqi forces so that the resumption of military action does not become necessary. They're also insisting that those who killed and mutilated 4 American contract workers be handed over for trial and punishment. In addition, members of the Governing Council are seeking to resolve the situation in the South. Al-Sadr must answer the charges against him and disband his illegal militia. Our coalition is standing with responsible Iraqi leaders as they establish growing authority in their country.